Welcome to episode 86 of I Thought I Knew How, a podcast about knitting and life and all sorts. I'm your host, Anne Frost, and this episode was recorded on October 15th, 2022. Today, we are going to get caught up. I am home from my 7 weeks away, and I have stuff to share and a whole lot to fill you in on about what is coming up, so let's get started. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to thank Samantha, Susan, Natalia, Barbara, and Christine for becoming patrons of the show over at patreon.com/I Thought I Knew How. My patrons help pay the bills associated with running the podcast so it doesn't come out of the family budget, so many thanks to all of you for that. Pledging at various levels comes with various perks. To learn more, please visit patreon.com/I Thought I Knew How or use the link in the show notes. Thanks as well to NC1217 for leaving a kind comment and a 5-star review of the podcast over on Apple Podcasts. Your comments and ratings help make the show more visible, so taking the time is a great way to support the show. Okay, clearly I am back and home again. This round of the Makkin Our Way Through Shetland tours was quite the experience. We ran 3 weeks back-to-back this time, 2 weeks for Fair Isle with a lace week in between. We had folks who came for one and folks who came for both. It was lovely to meet everyone and get to spend time together with fellow wool nerds, unabashedly enjoying the experience. Our common interests in knitting and wool provided a springboard for us all. We all start by bonding over yarn, and by the end of the week, we're sharing our lives. One thing that struck me again this time is the diversity of life that comes together over wool. I mean, every gathering of knitters is going to have some level of diversity built into it because humans aren't clones. So you go to your local knit club and you're likely to see a collection of folks with varying ages and backgrounds, but you tend to have a lot of similarities because of the fact that you're all local to one another. But on a knitting tour, you're pulling in people from all corners of the earth. We had lawyers and caregivers, retirees and teachers, wool producers and actresses, single folks and married couples. Some had reluctant partners along, some were a little more enthusiastic. We had folks from the UK, Canada, the US, and New Zealand in this round of tours. Folks from every corner of the political landscape as well. And again, that interest in wool gives us all a starting point. But as the week progresses, more common interests come out and we find more similarities between our lives. And we also find areas where maybe we aren't aligned or we don't agree. And I was gratified to find that respectful discussion has not been lost from the world. At least in the US, it feels like the media would have us all be at war with one another over every variation in thought about an issue. But I'm finding that when a relationship starts with a solid bit of common ground beneath it, people tend to look for more and be patient and listen over the disagreements. I love Shetland. I love knitting. I love hosting people in Shetland while we learn about knitting. But the thing I'm enjoying most about these tours is the reminder of just how delightful people are. Rather than giving a blow-by-blow of the 3 weeks, I'm going to just share 2 of my favorite things from this round of the tours. First was getting to know a knitter from the area named Hazel Lawrenson. I actually met Hazel on the spring tours. She's one of the ladies at the Unst Heritage Center, which is a small local museum known for its displays of Shetland lace. Unst was one of the hotbeds of lace knitting back in the day and still has some extremely talented knitters around. When we visit the Heritage Center, they invite the local knitters to come knit with us and show off their work. I arrived and saw Hazel was there again and made a beeline to sit next to her. Hazel has been knitting lace for over 30 years now, and her work is incredible. She's done several pieces inspired by or as recreations of pieces from the museum. She's also created patterns for lace swatches that they sell in the museum gift shop that you can buy as a kit and try yourself. She is humble about her own knitting and encouraging for others, happy to let people try out her knitting belt and chat with them about what she knows about lace and Shetland knitting. This year, there is a cardigan pattern in the Shetland Wool Week Annual that was created by Hazel using a cardigan from the museum as a guide. It's called Marin's Cardigan, and for now, it's only available in the Shetland Wool Week Annual for 2022. Though this year, they have provided a way for people to buy a digital copy, so you don't have to have a copy shipped to you. Anyway, Marin's cardigan is V-necked with a cat's paw pattern forming a V shape in the front and coming around to the back of the neck. And it has other lace patterns through the sleeves and the body. There were other similar examples of these types of cardigans on display around the islands for Wool Week. Most of them had the cat's paw patterning around the V-neck, but from there, the knitters seemed to have chosen their own favorite lace patterns for the bodies. I saw Hazel's pattern on the Shetland Wool Week Instagram feed before they released the annual, and I immediately went to buy the yarn for it. I don't know if I'm just getting to be a certain age and the idea of a lightweight lace cardigan is appealing to me, or if it's tickling my early memories of the older women in my life from when I was very, very young, but I just fell in love with the pattern as soon as I saw it. I think I am going to keep the cat's paw patterning around the neckline and just knit the rest of it in as solid stockinette. But who knows, maybe once I get going, I'll throw some lace patterning in as well. Hazel is what my friend Jenny would call a sleeper hit. She's not super present on social media. She's pretty low-key in person. She's not really well known to the wider world because she hasn't published really any patterns like to the internet. But she was a fascinating woman to speak with. You have to come to UNS to learn from her. Second, I have to say that the Shetland Textile Museum was a big winner for me this time. This is a smaller museum on the edge of Lerwick, and I always enjoy what they have on, but I especially like the displays this year. I do have an episode with one of the trustees on the Jameson and Smith YouTube channel that I can link to in the show notes, and I'll sort of give you a sense of the size of the rooms of the museum. There's really 4 rooms that are generally open to the guests, and they rotate different exhibits through every year. So it's not a huge building, but they do have a very interesting collection. The first room that you come into is the gift shop, which is full of fiber crafts from local folks, ranging from, patterns to locally produced yarns, hand-dyed yarns, hand knit items, machine knit items, things for your home. The other room on the ground floor has a massive old floor loom in it with some Shetland tweed and other woven fabrics on display. And then upstairs are 2 rooms that hold the displays that change the most each year. In one, they had a display based on the Jameson and Smith color box competition. So each year, Jameson and Smith chooses 8 of their colors, and local knitters are challenged to come up with something using at least 5 of the shades. The finished items are then judged at the various agricultural shows. So this is a contest for local folks, but they do, they publicize what the colors are so you can try your hand at it. But the contest really is for local Shetland knitters. I must admit that I often see the colors chosen and I think, oh, well, that's not for me. I can't imagine how people are going to put them together in a workable pattern. But then by the end of the event, there are just tons of gorgeous items knit from the colors. The exhibit had the actual shades from each year of the contest there in a case for everyone to see them together. And then the other display cases had examples from some of the prize-winning garments from nearly every year. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 years from the early stages that weren't represented, but that was all. This year's collection of colors included shades of purple and copper and brown, and I just thought, But some of the projects people came up with were just absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, seeing the collection of items through the years was really, really neat. In the other room, there are typically examples of clothing on display that are selected on a theme. And the biggest takeaway from this year's exhibit was the kit that they had displayed that came with a pre-knit yoke. Now, I'm talking about like just the decorative part of the yoke. So if you think of your typical Shetland Fair Isle cardigan, Farrelly Yoke cardigan, it's usually solid color body and arms, cut up the front for the buttons. And then there's usually like a strip that goes around the shoulders from the front around the shoulders to the other side that will have, Norwegian stars and tree patterns in different colors. So it's that strip that went around your shoulders. That part came in the kit, pre-knit. And then it came with the coordinating color for the knitter who bought the kit. So this would have been like in the 50s or the 60s, in the olden days. Apologies for that. Anyway, they would then take the solid color and knit up to where the yoke is, attach the yoke, and then pick up and knit the collar part, do the sleeves, do the button bands. And I just thought how absolutely backwards that was. Because at the same time, you have knitters in Shetland who are going to knitting factories and picking up the machine knit bodies and taking them home and knitting the yokes onto them and doing all the finish work and then selling them. You know, they got to knit the fun part. And then they're producing these kits for people at home to buy where the fun part of the knitting's done for you. And you would do all that, you know, boring stockinette knitting on your own. And I thought, oh, how our attitudes about knitting have changed. You know, as knitters now, we want the more challenging parts. I mean, it's good to have, you know, a basic pattern to work on when you're watching a show or traveling or whatever, on a call with work. But that's not the fun part of knitting, right? We sort of get beyond that part and want to start doing cables and lace and, you know, all sorts of different stitch patterns. But nope, these were very popular kits where the fun part was done for you and you could just do the stockinette. Anyway, we had a chance on the tours to enjoy the handling collection at the Textile Museum too, which I had not experienced before. This is kept on the upper floor of the museum and is only open by advance booking. So it was the first time I got to see the collection. And my favorite thing about it was that they had examples of rayon Fair Isle for us to handle. Now, I've seen rayon Fair Isle before around the islands, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's Fair Isle knit with rayon yarn. The yarn tends to be fingering weight or lighter, and they are shiny. The most impressive ones I've seen are knit with black wool for the background and rayon for the pattern, because the rayon sections appear to glow against the black. But in the handling collection, there was a rayon Fair Isle jumper that was knit completely in rayon. And it was the first chance I'd gotten to actually touch one. And I could not believe how heavy it was. It felt like it was several pounds for like a smallish adult size sweater. Suddenly, the appeal of the look dropped for me, shall we say. I think by the end of the day, I'd be exhausted from wearing one of those around. But still, they're so lovely. So those were my two favorite takeaways from the trips this time was getting to know Hazel Lawrenson a little bit better and the Shetland Textile Museum displays. Spots on the tours for 2023 are very limited at this point. All the Fair Isle weeks are full. Each lace week has only one space each, and there's only one spot, possibly two, if someone comes with a travel companion and you're willing to share a room, for the Contemporary Crafts Tour in the late summer, and that's it. If you're interested in joining in next year and discovering your own favorite bits of Shetland and making some connections with lovely fellow travelers, use the link in the show notes to learn more or visit ithoughtIknewhow.com and click the link in the header to the Shetland Tours 2023. Let's have a song. I've missed the songs. This is It Don't Get Old Loving You by Humans Win. I'll be back with you in 3 minutes. Enjoy.
When I was young, just a boy, dreamed of falling in love with a girl like you. Through the years I thought I found you, but nothing would do. Now here we are. Ooh, I wanna grow old with you. Making my dreams come true. Ooh, with you I feel brand new, 'cause I don't get old loving you. When I was older looking hard, your love hit me hard. I didn't see you coming. Through the years you were doubting, you thought about running. Now here we are. it don't get old loving you. Dreams come true. Ooh, with you I feel brand new, 'cause it don't get old loving you. 'Cause it don't get old loving you.
So I have been gone for quite a bit. I believe it's been over 2 months since the last episode, and almost all of that I was away from home for. After the tours were over, I did a little traveling with my husband. I met him in Austria. Neither of us had been to Austria before, and we planned the trip to start and end in Vienna, but also to get out and see more of the countryside. My husband enjoys driving, so we drove across the country to Salzburg and Innsbruck, and then went back to Vienna for the last few days. I wasn't looking for wool, but I was looking for wool. You know me, of course I had an eye out. I did decide to not seek out yarn stores while we were there, and I did stick to that. I mean, I searched for them on Google, but I didn't actually go to any. Because judging by the photos on Google, it looked like they all stocked just commercially produced yarns anyway, which is fine. I love me a good European yarn. But when I'm traveling, I like to try to find a yarn that's locally produced in some way, even if it's just someone local who's dyeing a commercial base. I just want yarn that feels like a souvenir. Well, man, did I luck out. When we left Vienna, we spent a day in the Warschau Valley before heading west. The valley has the Danube flowing through it and all sorts of castles along the mountainsides, like crazy amounts of castles. Like you start to understand how we have all these fairy tales about princesses and castles. Like the place is just littered with castles. We stopped at one called Agstein Castle, which is the ruin of a castle that started being built in the 1100s, and it was added to over time and was actively in use for hundreds of years, but is now just sort of perched on the edge of this mountain overlooking the Danube and is rambling and layered. And now parts of it are filled with rubble and parts are being restored to a certain degree. And parts are now little museum rooms and there's lunch rooms and there's a restaurant. So it's really like a hodgepodge of stuff going on there now. We got there maybe an hour before closing and we went through taking pictures as fast as we could and trying to soak it all in because the spot it's in is just gorgeous. The Danube is down in the valley below and the valley side was just full of trees and they were just starting to turn colors. It was just absolutely gorgeous. And as with so many tourist sites, as you leave, you have to pass through the gift shop. And I made it there 5 or 10 minutes before my husband did. So I had a few extra minutes to poke around and really see what was in that gift shop. And that is when I saw kits that were obviously small batch yarns. The labels were entirely in German, which I do not speak or read, and printed on a normal home printer. So I knew I was looking at something very small scale and local. And I picked a kit that was made up of 2 hanks of red and 2 hanks of gray. Now, Google Translate helped me enough to realize that the kit came with a pattern for a small baby blanket, but I was not in need of that. So I decided to knit a scarf instead, and I cast on the next day. I also sent an email to the address that was on the label, just in the hopes of seeing, what's the chance? Maybe they speak English, maybe they can offer me some more insight into the wool. So the yarn is produced by Ulrike Müller-Kaspar, a wool advocate living in Langenlois, Austria. She uses the wool from her friend's small flock who lives just nearby and has it spun to yarn, and then she does the dyeing herself. The yarn I got on that day is a DK weight, about 250 meters for 100 grams. It's fairly loosely plied woolen spun yarn. It's not super soft, but it's also not itchy. It feels like wool without being irritating. So 2 hanks got me a scarf 6 feet long and about 6 inches wide. I knit it in a chevron pattern, and it's pretty basic. I'm hoping to have a spare hour or two to sit down and write up the pattern and just release it as a free sample knit, because it was a nice sort of relaxing, good sort of travel knitting project. But that's going to have to wait until after I actually get the ends woven in and get this scarf blocked, because, you got to do things in a certain order. Ulrike sells from her shop Dye Spindel and online and at various shows. She also offers online classes and in-person retreats. I will be sure to put her link in the show notes for any of you who might be headed in her direction or who are German speakers and looking for some online classes. I did see wool again a few days later. It was in the context of some historical reenactors / interpreters at a historical site. So we stopped to visit Salzwelten, which is the oldest known salt mine in Europe, and it is actually still in operation. They have tours of the inactive parts of the mine that take you underground and through like a mile of tunnels in the site. And on the way up and back down from the mine entrance, there were various tents set up with people demonstrating carpentry and blacksmithing and fiber crafts and all sorts of different, cooking and herbalism, things like that. So I stopped and spoke to the women at the fiber crafts area and had a nice chat with one of them there who works as a textile historian in one of the museums in the area. She was telling me there are examples of ancient linen and wool textiles in the area from thousands of years ago, but today, she said, very few people still keep sheep or grow linen in the area. It tends to be done by hobbyists. Flocks are very small, and I will say that morning was the first time I had seen sheep on the trip, and it was a very small flock of like maybe a dozen animals. We only saw a few other small flocks on the rest of the trip as well. The textile historian confirmed that most people raising sheep in Austria are doing it for the meat, and the wool is just generally discarded. So I felt extra lucky to have found Ulrike's locally grown and processed yarn a few days before. When the trip ended, we both headed back to Shetland. Adam stayed for just a few days before heading back to the US, and then it was time for Shetland Wool Week. I was so thrilled to be back to a real in-person Wool Week again. This year had a very different feel from 2019. Part of that was on purpose, I think. The organizers billed the event as a low-key ramping back up to normal sort of event, and the numbers reflected that. So by like day 3, I was guessing that there was about 300 of us there for Wool Week, and someone said no, she'd heard one of the organizers say that 400 people had bought tickets to different events. You don't buy a ticket to Wool Week, you buy tickets to the classes. And so about 400 people had bought tickets to different classes. And that's compared to close to 1,000 people in 2019. So of course, the general feel of the event was much calmer. I ran into the same people over and over because there were fewer of us there, which made it easier to get to know people. Additionally, a lot of the people who were there were the hardcore Shetland Wool Week addicts, so I saw quite a few people I'd originally met in 2019 or who had made the trip last year for the really, really tiny in-person Wool Week offerings. By now, I've taken a lot of the available classes, either at Wool Week or online or through the tours. So I branched out a little into the non-traditional. A few of my favorites were Helen Robertson's fizzy knitting class, which is a Fair Isle slip stitch technique that allows you to get 3 colors in a row while you're only ever knitting with 1 or 2 colors. It's very clever and simple once you know how. Helen offers the class online and will be producing a book of patterns using the technique, so I'll encourage you to visit her website to learn more. Another favorite class was the one I had with Allison Rendall. One of the things I'd been hoping for is a class on what to do next. I mean, there are lots of classes at Wool Week about choosing colors and how to knit Fair Isle generally, but there hadn't really been a class on how to then apply it. Allison created a class called Knitting Without a Pattern, the Shetland Way, where she broke down all the steps from start to finish on how to knit a Fair Isle sweater to fit a specific person. Everything from getting gauge as your starting point to testing colors and patterns, to pattern placement within the sweater, to proportions when it came to where to start the armholes and the neck holes, and then shaping those arm and neck openings. She just laid it all out for us. I was taking notes like a mad woman. Now I just need time. Oh, I need time. I left the class wanting to cast on a sweater immediately, and I still do, but I'm going to have to carve out about 6 weeks and just decide that that's when I'm going to do it. I also had a class at Red House, which is Mike Finney, a silversmith on the island. I made 3 silver buttons, which was such a treat. I've made beaded jewelry for, 30 years now. Oh, I can say I've been doing something for 30 years. That's crazy. But never anything that involved actually manipulating metal. And punching the buttons out of the sheet of silver was extremely satisfying. I also had a class and attended a talk with Elizabeth Williamson and her mother, Betsy. They are both extremely talented lace knitters. I've had classes with Elizabeth before online. You probably heard me talk about her before, but it was a treat to learn from her in person. And she and her mother had great rapport and shared so much about their personal and family history with knitting. And I'm not going to say too much more about that because my next episode is actually an interview with Elizabeth. So I'll leave you to look forward to that. Knit New Haven is back to in-person knit nights and classes. There is a 2-part Learn to Knit class starting just days after this episode will go live, as well as Darn It, which will teach you how to use the Katrinkles loom to repair your knits. Find out more and check out their online shop at knitnewhaven.com. The Morehouse Merino Flock Group continues to roll forward. We most recently have been working on the Heido Fude cardigan, which is an open swingy cardigan that is knit entirely as one piece with no seaming and only 2 ends to weave in when you're done. It has a lovely basic all-over lace pattern that becomes second nature to knit as you go. I finished mine a month ago, but I didn't have the space to block it while I was traveling, so I'll be taking care of that this week so I can wear it during these early fall days and as an inside extra layering piece over the winter. If you missed out, that's okay. All the information you need to knit your own, as well as the support from other knitters, is waiting for you at morehousemerinoflock.com. I am one of those people who always scoffed at the idea of having prepared meals delivered to my home, but this summer, life got so busy that we were ordering lots of takeout to cope with the time stress. I crunched the costs and realized that meal deliveries would actually save us money and provide us with healthier options. Life has not slowed down, and Factor meals have become a way of life. Factor offers meals that are low-calorie, ketogenic, vegetarian, or protein-packed. You can pick which meals you receive each week and how many. They're never frozen. They arrive in a chilled box. You just pop them in your fridge, and they're there for you when you need a quick meal. I eat ketogenic, and since I started ordering from Factor, it's been so much easier to stay on track without falling into eating the same thing over and over again for days on time. From time to time, I receive codes I can give people for a free box of 4 meals. If you are interested, drop me a line at ann@familypodcasts.com. That's Ann with an E at familypodcasts.com with Factor in the subject line. And as I get these codes, I'll pass them along. Or if you're ready to just give them a go, use my link in the show notes to order and you'll receive a discount off your first 6 boxes. As far as I know, these meals are only available in the US at the moment. These are great options for families when you know you have those 1 or 2 nights a week where cooking dinner is a crunch. Just pack a box with the meals you need for those nights. Or if you're a singleton or an empty nesters and are done dirtying up the kitchen to make a complete meal for 1 or 2 people, box sizes range from 4 meals to 18. Pick the size you need for that week and fill it with the meals that sound good. Their website is very easy to navigate. They also have an app that you can use with your phone, and it's not a hassle to pause or discontinue your subscription. Again, send me your email with Factor in the subject line to get a code for a free box of 4 meals as I get those codes, or use a link to place the order. As always, thanks for supporting our sponsors. Your support of them helps support the show. This episode is slated for release on October 17th, which means that at the moment, I am in the throes of planning the next Wovember event. Wovember was originally the brainchild of two knitting and wool enthusiasts, Felicity Ford and Louise Scale, both podcasters as well. The event was a month-long online celebration of wool that served to educate the public about the unique qualities of wool, ways to use wool in our daily lives, and the importance of preserving the name to refer to the fiber produced by sheep. For instance, with a 95% acrylic, 2% nylon, 3% wool jacket, it's a bit disingenuous to be calling that a wool coat. 100% acrylic but fuzzy? That's still not wool. Wool is a natural wonder fiber with really amazing qualities to it that we've lost track of as a society, and Wovember is a time to learn and educate and be creative about and with wool. Felix and Louise ran Wovember for 7 years. The website for the project still exists at wovember.com, and I encourage you to poke your head in and look around because it's a massive resource for those who are wanting to learn more about wool. They stepped back from the project in 2017 and encouraged others to carry Wovember forward as they saw fit. And at that point, the event pretty much slipped into a groove of being a posting prompt event on Instagram. Someone would come up with 30 post prompts related to wool. People would spend a month making a post a day about wool according to the prompts, and there would be a few prizes for some of the participants. The website portion with the longer form content still exists, but it was no longer being added to as part of the event. So last year, possibly understandably, after all we'd collectively been through, it seemed like no one was going to step forward with even the posting prompts. So I did. I got a collection of people who were in the wool industry to offer prizes. This year, I am working on making Wovember more of an event along the lines of the original incarnation. So final steps are being put into the creation of a new website. The prompts are chosen, and I'm in the middle of recruiting people to create content. The goal is that in addition to the daily post prompts on Instagram, there will be a daily post to this new website. A longer form post could be a video, it could be book excerpts, educational blog entries, personal essays, and more from and about members of the wool community focused on the wonderful qualities of wool. In addition, this year I am compiling a marketplace for the event. It will go live on November 28th, 2022, which is Cyber Monday. It will be your one-stop shop to find things made of wool for your holiday shopping. All the content, including the marketplace, will remain on the new website year-round. So 4 months from now, when you're planning your spring garden and trying to remember about the wool fertilizer you'd heard about during Wovember, you'll be able to just pop back into the marketplace page and find the link to that retailer again. Because it's one thing to encourage people to use wool, my hope is that the marketplace will actually make it feasible. I have put out feelers to many content creators and wool producers and designers and companies, but if you are interested in creating a piece of content for the blog, or if you own a wool-related company and would like to be involved, please be in touch. Send me an email at Anne, A-N-N-E, at ithoughtIknewhow.com. And I'll send you the link with the information. Deadlines for contributions are fast approaching though, so please do not delay. For everyone else, hold tight. Teasers are headed your way on social media if they haven't already appeared. The website is going to go live in a matter of days. The posting prompts for Instagram will go live on October 27th at the I Thought I Knew How Instagram account to give you time to start thinking ahead for a few days about how you're going to answer the prompts yourself on your own Instagram account. There will be prizes as well, but rather than doing a bunch of different prizes like last year, we are simplifying things to 3 prizes. So there will be a prize for photography, there will be a prize for writing, and there will be another prize that will be awarded by choosing a name at random from the list of people who successfully created a post for each of the 30 prompts. If you start the Instagram posting challenge and get behind, that's okay. I encourage you not to post ahead of schedule, but if you fall behind and need to make some posts to catch up, we will still see them as long as you use the hashtags for the event, which will be hashtag Wovember and hashtag Love Wovember. I will talk about this more in the next episode too. For now, though, one more song, also by Humans Win. I really like this one. It's one of his newer releases. This is Keep It Simple, and I'll see you on the other side.
Keep it simple, keep it sweet. Here's a line I heard somewhere. Feel the ground under your feet. It can take you anywhere. Chasing shadows with you. Let's get broken, then repair. In times of anger, feeling hopeless, find that light under the door. Build a bridge right to the shore. All that could have been talk and would have been walks. Ain't never done much for help. Get on your feet and run. Too much temper, too much bittersweet. Burning candles on our own. And way if we get to where we're going now, we can always come back home. In times of anger, feeling hopeless, find that light under the door. Build a bridge right to the shore. All that could have been talk and would have been wants. Ain't never done much for help. Get on your feet and run. Keep it simple, keep it sweet. Here's a line I heard somewhere. Feel that ground beneath your feet. It can take you anywhere.
A few more things before I go. The Shetland Hogmanay boxes are in the works. 8 of you should actually have them already. 3 people who ordered from Canada and 5 from the UK all had their boxes shipped from the UK before I left Shetland. Everyone else, your boxes are in the process of being packed up. My goal is to ship them the first week of November, and I will keep you updated about those. I will be doing the daily blog posts through December with Jana of the Purl Together podcast again. For those of you who didn't see that last year, Jana and I met every morning of December to open our wool boxes together. And most days we had an interview to share with the person who created one of the things that we opened that day. The episodes ran 20 to 40 minutes, and we had a lot of fun with them. I've heard from listeners that quite a few of you enjoyed them as well. I know we're both excited to have that time to hang out together again, too. So if you haven't already subscribed to the Purl Together channel on YouTube, hop over and do that. For those of you who watch that knitting show, Erin and I will be starting those up again. I will accept responsibility for the ever-lengthening delay with those. I got back from Shetland in a state of complete burnout. So we didn't get to film for October, and that's my fault. I just could not handle any more wool or yarn or knitting talk. I just needed like a detox time. But I am determined to get us back into it in November, though. Please cross your fingers for us. This episode is technically a week late. And again, I refer you back to the state of burnout I faced coming back from the trip. So I will actually be back with the next episode in a week's time to get back on schedule. Next week, I do have that interview for you with Elizabeth Williamson, an incredible knitter of Shetland lace who offers online and in-person classes and designs beautiful pieces for us all to knit. So I'll see you soon with that. And in the meantime, Thank you for listening and knitting with me for a bit. If you'd like to support the show, please visit patreon.com/IThoughtIKnewHow to make a monthly pledge. You may also consider making a purchase from one of our sponsors by visiting the website IThoughtIKnewHow.com and clicking the link at the top that says Be a Booster. While you're on the site, you can also find the show notes for each episode. Thank you ever so much to my patrons, to Knit New Haven, and to Morehouse Farm for sponsoring the podcast. Find me on my social media accounts as I Thought I Knew How, except on Twitter, where it's just Thought I Knew How. The groups on various platforms are all called I Thought I Knew How Podcast. Until next time, may you be blessed with stitches that never drop, yarn without joins, and plenty of time to knit.